Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the country of Venezuela. Alright guys, a little icebreaker, couple fun facts. How much does a polar bear weigh? Enough to break the ice. Alright, now that we got that out of the way, Venezuela has the cheapest gas prices in the world at 1 cent a liter. It's roughly 4 cents a gallon. Must be nice. Also, Hugo Chavez banned Coke Zero in June 2009 because he said artificial sweeteners were too unhealthy. He also argued that capitalism was responsible for ending life on Mars. The country of Venezuela gained its independence from Spain in 1811. It's located in the northern part of South America. To the north is the Caribbean Sea. To the east is Guyana. To the south is Brazil, and to the west is Colombia. The capital of Venezuela is Caracas. The total population of Venezuela is nearing 29.5 million people. The economy of Venezuela is steadily decreasing. That started around 2013 with the election of a new president, and also with the decreasing prices of oil. The currency rate is also decreasing. Right now it's at about 6.35 to a dollar. Engineers and doctors get paid the equivalent of $1 a day. So instead of being engineers and doctors, they choose to be cab drivers, or they smuggle pasta and oil to the west, to Colombia, and sell it. The country is in short supply of basic goods like toilet paper and bread, and usually if they do have it, people of Venezuela have to wait hours in line to buy them. Also, inflation is around 70%. Petroleum in Venezuela. Oil was known to be in Venezuela before the discovery of the Americas in 1492. The indigenous people of Venezuela used to collect oil with sheets by placing them on top of oil seeps and then wringing out the sheets. After that, they used buckets. The main uses of oil were torches and caulking canoes. The first rig was acquired from Pennsylvania in 1880. The world market for Venezuela and oil did not meet until about World War I and World War II, when they started selling oil.
This is the Orinoco Belt. It holds the majority of all onshore Venezuelan oil. The Orinoco Belt is comprised of multiple oil fields, some being some of the largest in the world. Of all proven oil reserves, Venezuela is second to none, as it boasts a staggering 298 billion barrels of oil, followed by Saudi Arabia, Canada, and Iran. Oil holds a very important role in Venezuela's economy, as it is responsible for not only 80% of Venezuela's total export revenue, but also for producing about 1/3 of the entire country's gross domestic product. The oil industry is also responsible for contributing to half of the central government's income.
Alright, next we talk about trade in Venezuela. EIA estimates that in 2013 net exports from Venezuela totaled nearly 1.7 million barrels per day of crude oil and petroleum products, a significant decrease since the peak of 3.1 million barrels per day in 1997. Imports to the U.S. Gulf Coast refineries specifically designed to handle heavy crude oil from Venezuela. So a lot of crude oil from Venezuela is imported to the US. Because of that reason, in 2013, Venezuela exports about 797,000 barrels per day of crude oil and petroleum productions to the United States. US exports to Venezuela. Although the number of crude oil from Venezuela have been declined, U.S. exports of petroleum production to Venezuela have been increasing. In 2000, only 7,000 barrels per day of oil was exported from the United States to Venezuela. But now, The number is 84,000 barrels per day in 2013. The reason for that is because Venezuela's tight finance that leaves it unable to invest and maintain its own domestic refineries. Next, we will talk about exploration in Venezuela. About 90% of Venezuela's natural gas reserves are located in the same place as oil reserves. On its offshore reserves, Venezuela is working to increase the production of non-associated gas. Onshore, Petroleum de Venezuela is working towards raising production and capacity at existing sites. Now we will talk about Venezuela energy market overview. Venezuela is known as one of the world's top 10 producers of crude oil. It is capable of pumping an average of 3.2 million barrels per day. Venezuela has to pay more than $3 million each year just to maintain production levels at existing fields.
The organization is the petroleum exporting country, also known as OPEC. It was formed in 1960 in Baghdad, Iraq. And the countries that founded OPEC were Venezuela, Kuwait, Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. OPEC was created to stabilize international oil prices, and they did this by maintaining export quotas to avoid overproduction of oil. Hugo Chavez helped revive OPEC after it had lost much of its influence, and he did this by personally visiting many of the leaders, and then he hosted the second OPEC summit. History of Venezuela's oil. 1914, first commercial oil well drilled in Venezuela, and it was called the Sumic well, and it was discovered at the Mina Grande oil field. And in 1929, Venezuela was the world's second largest oil producer, which is quite impressive. By World War II, Venezuela was the world's largest exporter. In the 1950s, there was an oversupply of oil, and Venezuela's government revenue, along with the world oil price, increased rapidly due to the Embargo Act of 1973 in the Middle East. In 1980, OPEC members quit following a lot of their quotas, which was never good. And by 1998, the price of oil reached a new historic low, with Venezuela's economy hitting very hard. After Hugo Chavez became the president of Venezuela, he met with OPEC and helped stabilize the economy, which made the prices of oil go up.
Even though the country is still doing well with its oil production, the country as a whole has still been suffering. Oil production and exportation remain on the top 10 list in the world, with oil grossing them nearly $15 to $20 billion annually. Even with this, the Venezuelan bolivar has lost significant value. In only 5 short years, the bolivar went from being equivalent to $8 to now priced at 221 to 1.
Alright, in conclusion, the country of Venezuela gained its independence from Spain in 1811. The economy of Venezuela isn't doing well, with a short supply of basic goods and an inflation up around 70%. Petroleum in Venezuela were discovered by the natives in Venezuela before the discovery of the Americas in 1492. The Orinoco Belt holds the majority of onshore oil in Venezuela. Venezuela has the largest proven crude oil reserves in the world. Almost half of the central government's income is from oil. In 2013, the EIA estimated that the net exports of crude oil and petroleum is 1.7 million barrels per day. The U.S. Gulf Coast has refineries that are specifically designed for the crude oils. In 2000, 7,000 barrels per day of oil was exported from the U.S. to Venezuela, compared to 84,000 barrels per day in 2013. So definitely a big increase of oil production the past decade. And let's see, 90% of Venezuela's natural gas reserves are located in the same place as the oil reserves. Venezuela is one of the world's top 10 producers. OPEC was created to stabilize international oil prices, and the oil industry in Venezuela is a blessing and a curse for the country, because the country is so dependent on oil. The inflation caused by this hurts all the other industries in the country, which explains how they can have such a high oil production but also have so many citizens under the poverty line.